All right, well, we'll jump in and get started. I sent in an email just an hour ago, so you may not have even seen it, just giving a heads up about this particular town hall. But we had a senior leadership retreat last month with members of our senior leadership team from each of the divisions. And during that day, I shared a presentation specifically related to collaboration and leadership and what that looks like within government operations. And so I thought it would be helpful to share some of that today as well for all of you, so you can see what we talked about, and happy to answer any questions. Of course, we'll have some time at the end to respond to questions that come through the chat. I have an update on 2700 West for the person who asked about that last time, so we'll chat about that a little bit. And then just open it up for whatever questions that you have for me today. We are going to cancel the December town hall just because December is such a crazy month with everything that's going on. So this will be our last one for this year, and we'll resume again in January. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And of course, I'm going to rely on you, Matt, to tell me if you can see it. All right, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay, so just going through this, we gave out 2 books to our senior leadership team. Both of them are by Simon Sinek, and he is one of my favorite authors on leadership. And this book, Together is Better, this was our theme for that particular retreat. And it really focuses on quotes from some of the talks that he's given or other books that he's published, discussing leadership and collaboration and the benefits of working together, especially on some of the challenges that exist within any organization. So throughout this presentation, you'll see several of the quotes from that book. Additionally, around the office, you're probably going to see some of these. They're large posters that have some of the quotes that we utilized at that leadership conference that are pulled from this book as well. So if you've seen some of those and you were wondering where they're coming from this book by Simon Sinek. So we talked about 2 things at that retreat. One of them was team perspectives, and then the other was leadership. And here's a quote here from Simon Sinek. And I started out by sharing some information on why I bring the perspective that I do to government operations. And so I've heard from Ken Hansen, who's been here for quite some time, and he's been through many executive directors, that each executive director that comes on board has a unique way of handling things or working through things. And one of the things that's been a little bit different about me is my desire to bring a variety of perspectives to the table when we're talking about issues or making decisions. And that can be people from throughout our organization, different divisions, but oftentimes it's also reaching out to GOPB or agencies and asking them to share some perspective or to weigh in. And a few times I've been asked this question, like, well, why do we need to talk to that group or get that perspective, or we'll bring them to the table? Why don't we just make this decision and move forward? And so I wanted to share a little bit of my background and how I got to that point. I started out in the private sector, and much of my career was working for technology startup companies here in Utah. And it was great. It was fast-paced. And this last company I worked for, MediConnect Global, we grew very rapidly and sold in 2012. And while we were very focused on meeting the needs of our customers, we were a startup, and we were funded through private equity. And so we were always aware that one of our main goals was to create a return in investment for those private equity investors. And so we had a board of directors, most of which were private equity investors, and our job was to make sure that they were taken care of and that what they wanted to see of our organization was actually happening. So we sold that company in 2012, and I decided to take a step back from crazy full-time work for a while and be home with my kids, but at the same time decided to run for city council in my city, which is in Cedar Hills. And for those of you who don't know, I actually served on the city council for 6 years and then as mayor for 3 years. And so that was a very different experience, going from this private sector tech startup world to now being in government and public sector, and things don't necessarily work the same way. And I had some experiences that really reshaped and helped me understand the importance of bringing a variety of perspectives to the table. And I could share lots of stories, but I'm just going to share this one today, which for me was one of the more powerful experiences that I had early on in my career as a city council member. So in Cedar Hills, it's a small city. We didn't have a public information officer or communications department. That was usually a council assignment. So I was given this council assignment of communications, which means that residents would reach out to me often if they had concerns. And one time I heard from a resident, he emailed me and asked if he could come into the city offices and meet with me. And we scheduled a time, and he came in and he brought with him a notice similar to this, because he had received notification from the city that he was behind on his utility bill and it was likely to be shut off. And he was very upset when he came in, and he felt like the city, by using this method of informing him, was trying to embarrass or humiliate him. And that was our motivation, was to try to embarrass people into getting caught up on any past due balances. And he just let me have it. He was really, really frustrated that the city would do this. And like anybody else, I hate being yelled at. And so I tried to sit there and listen, and I didn't know how, what happened in this process, like how long it's going on and what things we tried to do before this notice. So I told him I would take it back with me to city staff and other people in the council, and I'd at least talk through it and see if there were different ways of addressing issues such as this. So I met with city staff and we talked through things, and I learned how somebody gets to this point and why this is used. And we also talked about different ways of doing it in the future. We started to realize actually it wasn't always that effective, because a lot of people use their garage door instead of their front door, and so they might not see it anyway. And technology had advanced, and maybe there was a better way that we could engage with residents who were behind. So we decided to go a different route and try out something differently. And so I reached out to him via email and just let him know I appreciated him coming to me and sharing his concern, and we were going to try something different and move forward that direction. And a few weeks later, he reached out to me again and asked if we could talk on the phone. And so we scheduled a time to chat on the phone, and I braced myself for somebody who was probably still going to be angry with me. And the conversation went very differently. And he shared with me at that time that he and his wife had within the last few months had lost a child, and that child had passed away from a drug overdose. And it's something that this child had been struggling with for quite some time. And in fact, one of the reasons why they were struggling to stay up to date with their utilities is that they had invested a lot of money in expensive treatment programs and such that just hadn't worked. And so in addition to feeling all of these feelings of loss and grief that are totally normal, he also expressed that he felt some shame because we live in this area that's a higher socioeconomic area, and people in that area aren't supposed to struggle with things like that. And he was feeling shame, that he felt shame and just all of these overwhelming feelings. And he came home and he saw this notice on his door, and he let me know that at that moment, it just felt to him like one more announcement to his neighborhood that he was failing as a provider and as a father. And it just broke my heart to hear this story. And it was a huge eye-opener for me that as I'm shifting away from from private to public sector, that my board of directors was no longer this small group of people in a boardroom who could finance a tech startup company and see if it works. But my board of directors now were these citizens of the city who had elected me and were trusting me to not only make decisions regarding tax dollars, but policies that impact them and ways that government was going to interact and do business with them. And it was a good notice and reminder for me that I needed to make sure that if I was going to do my job effectively, that I better really understand what the citizens of my city expected of me and wanted of their government. And instead of just a board of directors of 10, it was now a city of 10,000, which is a smaller city compared to some of the bigger cities here in Utah as well. But we began to, as a city staff and as a council, talk about better ways that we could get messages out, but also receive feedback from citizens, because we really needed to know what they were thinking. And we had taken the traditional route of just sending out this paper newsletter with your utility bill and called it good, that we had, and we had a website, we posted things on the website. I don't know about you, but I've interacted with a lot of people, and most people don't go to their city website very often. And usually it's if they're looking for something specific. So they're not really using their city website as a way to get feedback from the city. So we looked at other things. We created social media. We put we had our newsletter still. We put notices in newspapers, but we also use electronic forms of the newsletter to email them out. We started holding town hall meetings. We created citizen committees that could help us research issues that were going to come to the council to weigh in and give some feedback. And we really tried to focus on reaching outside of the subject matter experts or SMEs that I have on here. We knew our staff, we had an incredible staff in Cedar Hills, and we knew that they really knew their jobs well, but we also recognized that it was time to bring in people from outside those subject matter experts circle and make sure that we were understanding what our citizens wanted as well. We also used surveys to get feedback. And one of the most important things that I learned, though, is that we need to do a better job of telling the whys. Within politics, there's always going to be differences of opinion, and sometimes contention can arise from that. And one of the things that we really recognized is if we did a better job of sharing the whys of why we were making decisions, then even people who might necessarily agree with the decision at least felt like they understood why that decision was made, or how we got to that point, or what the options were moving forward, and why the city council had decided to go a certain way. And that reminded me of this quote that Governor Cox shared in his leadership principles that I sent out earlier this year. And again, if any of you don't have those, please let us know, and we're happy to share those. But he talks about the success being 30% the idea, 30% how we message it, and 40% who we tell about it. And that we're not always very good about spending enough time on that 40%, that a lot of times we spend 90% on our idea and only 10% on our messaging. And so how important it is to focus on the messaging of what we're doing. And that's something that within government operations, we're going to be really focused on, not only internally, but externally, because our board of directors or our customers are all of these other state agencies that we, as a new department with our 9 divisions, provide services to. So how are we making sure that we know what these agencies want and expect from us? How are we making sure that they know what we're doing and the things that we're focusing on, so that way not only can they help share perspective, but have comfort that we are addressing the things that are coming up, and that we're thinking through these things, and that we're proactively engaged in finding solutions. I shared this pop quiz at the retreat, and there's a lot of us here, so I don't expect interaction here, but I just quickly asked somebody to tell me what was wrong with this map. And Matt, any thoughts? He's laughing at me. So the most common reaction that I get is it's upside down. That's the problem with it. And so I pushed a little bit on that, asking, is it really? I mean, are the countries in wrong spots? Are the oceans in the wrong locations? Are things labeled incorrectly? And if you think about it a little bit longer, it's not the way we're used to seeing it, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just flipped another way, and you're looking at it from a different perspective. And too often we get really used to seeing things through one lens in a certain way. And so when we see it, we recognize it and say, that's the right way of this thing. This is how it should be. And then when we see it slightly off, whether it's shaped a different way or flipped or upside down, our initial immediate reaction is, it's wrong. There's something wrong with it. Where the reality is it's not wrong. You're just shifting perspective, or you might be seeing things from a way that you're not used to seeing it. But it's still the same map, even if we're moving things around. So in 2008, Dr. Denise Rousseau, she did a study about decision-making and when companies were successful, what made them successful in their process. And one of the things that she came out of that was that when you have more diversity in the decision-making process, you make better decisions. And she listed these 4 things as what she meant by diversity. So when you're gathering information, you're going to a variety of sources. You're not just always utilizing the same experts that you rely on, the same organizations that feed us research or data, that when we're talking about making decisions or talking about solutions, that we make sure we have a variety of stakeholders at the table, and making sure that they have an opportunity to speak up and share things that we may be missing, that we might not have otherwise considered. that when we're looking at solutions, we can acknowledge that maybe there's not just one solution. There are multiple solutions that we should evaluate, and some are great and some are better, and making sure that we're working towards the ones that are going to be the most successful for us and our customers. And then just using multiple criteria, that we're not just focusing or looking through one lens or one outcome, like this is the only thing that we're trying to accomplish, but we're adding more criteria to whatever it is that we're talking about to come up with the best decision in the long term. So for our leadership, I issued 3 challenges. And the first one was to create a culture within government operations that encourages the sharing of ideas. And we have some great examples of employees who have done that. I've been thrilled to see how many employees have signed up to attend one of the focus groups, who have shared thoughts or feedback through the intranet, who proactively reach out and say, maybe there's a better way of doing things or a different way of doing things. And we want to encourage that, because when we have more ideas coming to the table and more options that we can discuss and vet, the better outcomes that we're going to have, not only for our department, but for those that we provide services to. And I love this quote from a conference I went to earlier. A gentleman by the name of Scott Wayne said this: "You can be right or you can make progress. You get to choose." And so sometimes it's very easy to, again, get really stuck in our silo or our way of thinking that the map's supposed to look this way, and it's challenging to see things from another perspective. But we are interested in making progress, and part of that is being willing to challenge and being willing to be challenged on some of our assumptions or the things that the way that we think things should be done. The second one that I challenged was to identify who isn't at the table. And so we have this amazing opportunity right now where we have 9 divisions who sit under one umbrella. And while we all provide services to the same agencies, we tend to do it very siloed through the division that we work for. And so one of the challenges I've issued to our senior leadership team is to look around the table. And if you were talking about policies or processes, or making decisions about things that are going to affect our entire department or other agencies, if you look around the table and the only people in the room are people within your division, then you are operating in a silo, and there are going to be things that you miss. And so take advantage of the opportunity to bring in people from throughout our department, and ask them and get their perspective. And the third one was to just be very intentional about collaboration from our team and our customers. And going back to number 2, again, we have this unique situation where we are 9 divisions that provide services to other agencies, but we also are each other's customers. So, HR provides services to the divisions within our department. So they are both a part of our department and we are a customer of HR. Same thing with DTS or risk management, any of the divisions. We are both the team member and the customer. So don't be afraid to reach out to people on other teams or within other divisions and say, I'd like to know from your perspective as our customer, how are we doing here? Or what would you think if we changed this process here? Or considering adding this new feature, and what would that look like for you? And so I would love to see our teams be very much more intentional about branching out from beyond our divisions and asking each other, again, as a team member and a customer, about things that are going to impact our department or all agencies. With that, though, I also want to, again, quote something that Governor Cox said. And he talks about how debate and disagreement are encouraged, even demanded, but dissension after is not. Conflict can be healthy, but contempt and contention are not. And I very much subscribe to that philosophy as well, which is we want to debate and discuss and vet any decision that we're bringing to the table. But once a decision has been made, then we all have to be on board and we're pushing in that direction. If we go out and we are 9 different divisions telling our customers different things or asking for different things from the legislature or the governor's office, it's going to make it very difficult to be successful. We won't be successful. So we need to make sure that once a decision is made, we're moving forward and operating as a team. Just another quote here from Simon Sinek about the importance of team. It's people who work together. It's not people that work together. A team is a group of people that trust each other. And that's one of my favorites. So we also talked a little bit about leadership. And sorry, I'm going through these quickly because I want to make sure we have time for questions. In this book by Simon Sinek, it's called Leaders Eat Last. And this is my all-time favorite leadership book. And when he was interviewed asking about the reason for this title, he shared an experience that he had where he was talking with a general from the Marine Corps, and he was very intrigued with the Marines because they are often seen as an organization where they're very successful in creating this team mentality. And he was intrigued by that because for the most part, you have very young individuals that are coming in, maybe they just graduated from high school, they're 18, 19 years old. They come from different backgrounds and different life experiences. And they go to boot camp where they're being yelled at or challenged to do these really hard things that they've never had to do before. And there's very high expectation. And then once boot camp is over, you just see that they've really grown together and they're very proud of this accomplishment. And the military is one of these areas where you really see people just embrace this idea of we're in this together. And so he asked him, what is it about the Marines specifically that creates that mentality? And this general responded with the phrase, leaders eat last. And when he asked him a little bit about that more, he said in boot camp at the end of the day, when it was time for everyone to eat, that the officers would stand on the sides and wait for the recruits, for everyone else to have their meal first. And the leaders ate at the end. And the message that they were trying to send to their team was, we're going to challenge you and we're going to ask for hard things from you, but we're here to also take care of you and to make sure that you're taken care of. And that was what they were trying to relay through that process of making sure that their teams could see, we're making sure your needs are taken care of first before we as your leadership have ours taken care of. And he gets this great quote about leadership not being about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And I would say that applies to your teams and also to your customers. And it aligns really well with our SEAT values. And I know I've shown this to you many times through these town halls, and I hope that you're seeing this more and more through your divisions as well. But it aligns with these 4 values that we've come up for our teams. The SEAT values are on our service, engagement, accountability, and trust. And Dan Chase and his team did a great job of putting together some more detail to what we mean by these values. And if you don't have a copy of this, again, if you shoot an email to Melissa Brown, she'll be happy to send you a copy because we want to make sure that every employee has this. But when we talk about service, it's customer service and public service, but also service as you're engaging within our department with your peers. And engagement is making sure that we're empowering our employees to have the resources that they need to be problem solvers, and that you feel like you're valued and you belong here, and engaging with our clients. And then accountability, we're measuring, we're making sure that we are being held accountable to the things that we've committed to do, that supervisors and leaders have set clear expectations. So all of our team members know what those expectations are, that we're providing regular growth opportunities and training opportunities and professional development opportunities. And some of those things we have now, and some of those things are on our list that we know we still need to create and we're working on, and we're getting feedback from employees on what that looks like as well. And then trust is all about transparency for our customers, for us, for the citizens of Utah who we are ultimately serving, that we're holding ourselves to high ethical standards, and that we're known as an agency that is a valued partner by the other state agencies. So they trust us that we're going to do our job, we're going to do it well, and that we're going to be, and that will be competitive as well with the private sector. We talked a little bit about this too. Another one of my favorite quotes, this is from Peter Drucker though. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I am a big believer of that. We can have the best laid plans in the world, but if we have a poor culture, we're not going to be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And for me, a lot of that starts with building trust within our teams and within our agency, and making sure that that our employees trust that we as leaders are looking out for them, and that our customers trust that we are looking out for them as well. And when trust is missing within an organization, we have all of these problems that come up, right? There's unintended rewards for unhealthy behaviors, narrow thinking. There's a lot of contention. It's hard to create these really strong working relationships, and there's some resistance to change. So we're really focusing on building this culture of trust. And a lot of that comes from taking responsibility, where we want to create an environment where we're recognizing that none of us are perfect and we're all going to make mistakes. And so we want to make sure that We learn from those mistakes and we recover quickly, but we don't create an environment where people are afraid to own mistakes and try to hide those. And we want to make sure that we're addressing them and fixing them and moving forward, because we're all going to make them. Like I said, none of us are perfect. That we're reframing our assumptions or seeing others in a new light. Again, when we get very siloed in our thinking, it's easy to see others or as problems instead of seeing opportunities to work together. And so instead of assuming that our customers are wrong or other divisions are in the wrong or they don't know what they're doing or whatever the case is, that we're, again, being very intentional about bringing to the table and asking for some additional feedback or asking for perspective so we can see things through a different lens, which will help us reframe how we're looking at the problem and identify solutions. Gaining perspective, I talked about this a lot, but making sure that we're bringing other perspectives to the table and not staying siloed in just our individual divisions. Communication's a big one. I know Marilee Richens, who is working with our communication subcommittee, that whole team has been really focused on creating more opportunities for communication instead of just the few that maybe we've been used to. And that goes back to what I talked about when I was a city council member, where we had a few that we were really good at, but it wasn't necessarily the only or the best way to create two-way dialogue. So that's the purpose of these focus groups. And again, the surveys, the temperature surveys that we're gonna pick up again, is making sure that we are providing a variety of ways for people to share information with us. And then most importantly, that we're taking that information and doing something with it. It's useless to collect information and not do anything with it. And so I hope that you've seen through a town hall we did a few months ago and some future things that we have coming, that we take that feedback seriously and we're working to implement it and build upon our department with that feedback that we're getting from our employees and from the customers that we serve. We talked about creating a culture of trust, and it's about transparency. And that doesn't mean that we have all the answers, but that we're creating an environment where people can share and they can trust that they have all the information that they need to make better decisions and do great work for the state. And then also just demonstrating gratitude. We sent out our October employee recognitions for the month. I love that Governor Cox is focused on that. We really encourage you as employees to share. Let us know when you see things that employees are going above and beyond or helping out and demonstrating a willingness to help a customer or to help especially somebody else in the team. We want to hear those stories so we can share them. And we're really encouraging our leaders to also do that within individual teams and divisions. Some of the feedback that we've heard through our surveys and through these focus groups is sometimes employees feel like we as leadership can take the credit for when things go really well and push blame when things don't go well. And we want to do a better job of making sure that we are acknowledging the people who are participating on our teams and helping making us successful, because it's not the effort of one person. It's the effort of our teams that are making us successful. And in fact, one of the things I want to just emphasize again, I talked about this last time, but we're anxious to move forward in January with some additional internal teams. But I've been really impressed to see this pilot group that we're working with the Utah Department of Corrections. This is our internal pilot group that's meeting together to discuss challenges or issues for UDC. It's been fun to hear the updates from this group, where we have 9 individuals, one from each of the divisions, coming together to talk about an agency holistically and talk about how they can work together to address the challenges that UDC has. And they're learning what the other divisions within our department do beyond just the name, but what they actually do on a day-to-day basis. And they're creating relationships so that way when UDC has an issue, if the people who are at the table with them frequently, which is usually the IT director and the HR director, now they have established these relationships with others on the team, and they know exactly who to reach out to, or they can share that feedback in these meetings as they're meeting together to talk about UDC as a whole. And we're really excited to implement that same type of working group for every agency that we provide services to, and just being more intentional about creating opportunities for our team to come together to talk through some of the challenges that we face or some of the exciting things that we're trying to implement. And so I'm just going to finish up with this last quote that I shared with the team. You can all see it. The greatest joy as a leader has sorry, try that again. The greatest joy a leader has is to become the one who helps others find the vision they are looking for, to see those in their charge do more than they thought they were capable of, to watch the group take care of each other, to see the team work together to solve unsolvable problems. This is what it means to become a leader. It is not a journey to rise in the ranks. It is a journey to help those around us rise. And that is really the focus that we are reiterating and emphasizing with our leadership team, is that we want to create an environment where our employees feel valued, they feel safe, they feel like their perspective matters, they feel like we are providing opportunities for feedback to be heard and processed and listened to and implemented, that we're being intentional about creating those opportunities to weigh in and to share different perspectives. And I have just been really impressed with how many within our team have embraced that and have raised their hand and said, I want to sit on a committee, or I want to be part of one of these pilot programs, or I know you're doing this pilot program and here's what I've seen that we can enhance this particular service. And it's been fun to have all that feedback coming in, and we look forward to keep moving forward in that direction. So thank you to our leadership team for embracing that, and thank you to all of you as you continue to help move us in that direction. Let's see, I see a few things have come through. AGRC, is that you, Matt? Someone asking questions that I don't understand. Oh, they were probably talking about my map. Matt, my upside down map. Your team's getting the blame for that one. I love that map. You know, my 10-year-old, when I showed her that map and we talked a little bit about perspective, she argued with me with a good 10 minutes, like, no, it's still wrong, Mom. It has to be this way. It was a funny conversation. Let's see. I'm seeing lots of great feedback that I'm going to have Melissa just grab for me, and I can process later, because a lot of it's feedback. Thank you very much. I see a question. Can you share what ideas for improvement have been developed with this pilot group? Michael Glenn's going to be so mad at me that I keep putting him on the spot. I don't know if he's on the call. He chairs that UDC group. If he is on the call, I would invite him just to share some thoughts. I will tell you with this group, because it's the first one, I have not been attending their meetings because we've asked them to do a few things. Number one, we've asked them to again, create these intentional dynamics of conversing with each other. But the other thing we've asked them to do is to provide feedback to us on what these future groups should look like. So to help guide us on how often they should meet, and does it need to be all 9 people every time, or should they break up into smaller groups sometimes? And how do we engage with the agency to let them know that we're doing this? And how do we get feedback back from this group? Anyway, we've asked them to really help us structure what the future of these groups is going to look like. And I wanted to really give them a lot of autonomy to make recommendations to us instead of me dictating what that was going to look like, because this is a new thing, and so I don't necessarily know the best way to form it, and wanted them just to jump in and experiment and determine how that should look going forward. So okay, Michael's on a training. So what I will do is I will ask him to maybe just provide a couple of examples of what they're working on. The reason why we chose UDC is because they have some pretty significant changes coming up. They're moving to a new prison in July of 2022. So they've got this huge shift that they need to incorporate this new building, some new technology that's going to come with that. Archives has been working with them because at the prison site, they have records going back to before Utah was even a state that need to get transferred to archives. There's a lot entailed with this move. And so that's why we chose them as our first pilot, as we knew that most, if not all, of our divisions were going to have to be helping them with this transition in this process. So I'll ask Michael to give some updates because they're still in that pilot phase. So I haven't received the final update on that yet. Yes, we'll get that to you, Jennifer. Okay. Let's see. Before I open it up for questions, last time we met, somebody asked me about 2700 West and just the mess that it is in front of our entrance with the potholes in the street and what we could do about that. So I did have a brief conversation with DFCM, and of course, one of the challenges is the road, and even the curb and gutter entrance is the city, not the state. But eventually, I did not know this, but they are planning on making some significant improvements to 2700 West to allow for bus rapid transit. It'll have public transit coming up the street and some pedestrian and bike trails as well. So in the meantime, DFCM is meeting with Taylorsville elected officials to talk about what can be done in the meantime, so people aren't getting flat tires whenever they pull into the Taylorsville State Office building. So I appreciate DFCM reaching out to Taylorsville City and seeing what we can do to fix some of those issues until they do the major overhaul of 2700 West. And I'm not sure when that major change is coming either. I think that's still part of in their plans. All right, what questions can we answer today?
Can you share these documents with us? I mean, I'm thrilled with what I'm hearing. Are there some documents that can help us along the way?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I need to share my presentation from last time as well. So I'll just send both of these. Beyond these presentations, was there something specific that you were hoping for?
Any type of training documents, recommendations for how to interact with employees. Lab's been really unique that I'm working with a huge team from Department of Health, but I'm the only DTS employee down there. So any information would be helpful.
Absolutely. And I should say, and I don't know if John Barron's on the line, that's one of the things that HR has taken on and they are responsible for, which is developing some of these training programs our employees are asking us for. Some of the big ones are management and leadership training. We've had people ask for growth opportunities, and a lot of that will happen within the divisions themselves or professional development opportunities. But John, if you want to take a minute to talk about some of the things that your team's focused on, especially as it relates to the performance and supervisory management training.
Yeah, sure. About every third meeting, this topic comes up, which of course helps identify this as a need. And I'm always quick to remind this group that Director Reese, one of the first emails she asked, or one of the first projects she asked me to work on was in this space. So when the worlds are aligned like that, we know it's a priority. As DHRM continues to come out of the gate in this space, we have prioritized in this space, trying to accomplish probably one of the bigger tasks, which is introducing talent management with first-time manager training or a synchronized manager training development program. As I shared, or as I created a vision for the Department of Human Resource Management, the division, apologies. I have a charter goals. We all committed and hand stacked to charter goals. And one of the biggest goals you'd see is a deliverable of a leadership development program or a training program in that space. Admittedly, this doesn't have a ton of meat on the bones yet. Maybe getting ahead of some of these conversations that are external to government ops. Jenny works hand in hand with those conversations, not only directly with Governor Cox, but with other parties that are really vested in this. But I'm giving you a political answer to absolutely developing these programs, absolutely working on them, and synchronizing what training and development opportunities exist for our agencies, not only GovOps, not only the 401 people on this call, but also the other 30 some odd agencies that we support. We have an obligation to create this. So it sounds like Dan wants to chime in, but look, the synchronization of these efforts is pretty monumental. And I think it's what I would call a really different view than probably what existed in the state executive branch even 2 years ago. So creating a product that would be not low-hanging fruit, but the most opportunity for the most people is our starting point. There we go, CPM. Dan, come off mute and start talking to the reintroduction of either the CPM substitute or what that looks like.
Well, if you can hear me, let me just say, let me talk about things that are available to you right now. In fact, I'll try and put a link in here too. There are, I think about the request about how to interact. I think you talked with the Department of Health. Well, we have so many resources, virtual resources that are available to people right now that cover these kinds of topics, the off-the-shelf series, these archived webinars. We've got a new one coming up in December on how to hold effective one-on-ones. Things relating to emotional intelligence, communication skills, motivation, diversity, change management, all these kinds of things that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't know that they have access to. Another one is something that we have not done, back to Jenny's original point from Governor Cox, that we haven't done a good enough job of notifying people of, is a supervisor survival guide. That is currently available to you. It is a self-paced virtual training that you can take at your leisure that covers kind of foundational supervisor topics. The other thing I'll tell you is in January, we'll send out this email probably Monday of next week. In January, we're launching a leadership skills for supervisors class, which is we're reintroducing live training. This is a successful program we ran for years and years that got derailed with COVID. But we'll be hosting that here at our building. Now, we're offering that statewide. The other thing is, for DGO specifically, we are in the process of creating some developmental tools that are related directly to the SEAT values framework. These are assessments that leaders will be able to, that will administer for leaders that they can then get coaching on. That Marilee talked about that in our last meeting. She's going to pilot that, a 360 directly related to the SEAT competency. So what I would tell you is there are truckloads of resources that we have already produced. Thank you, Kendra. I'll pay you later. There are truckloads of resources available. We just have not done a good enough job of making it clear that there are things that are there that are available. And now, as we see life normalizing, we're getting back to more live instruction as well. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that there are things out there. I sent you the link to some of those webinars. We'll put a link on here, or we'll send out the supervisor survival guide. We'll make that available to everybody. And then, of course, you'll see the announcement for live training as well. But so I'm sorry to interject, but this came up last time, and I was like, no one talked about what we already have available, which is absolutely critical. So let my team know if you have any questions and specifically what those things are.
Thank you, Dan. Just going back to some comments from Bob and Jeff, I just want to say I completely agree. Just the importance of making sure that when we're in that information gathering phase, when we're looking at solutions to problems, that we're making sure that we're bringing multiple perspectives, and also especially our agencies, and making sure that we understand what it is that they're trying to have us figure out. So thank you for that. So many resources. I think, Dan, if I recall, those resources are listed on DHRM's website as well. Is that right? Or is it in the learning portal?
I couldn't unmute. Yeah, it's available on in the Employee Gateway, as well as there's a DHRM CFE Center for Excellence website that talks about the availability of these things. Now, again, it's been a little weird for the past year and a half or so with COVID. There hasn't been the same kind of live instruction. That's why we've tried to up the virtual resources that you have available with the Supervisor Survival Guide, which is available there, as well as links to all the webinars that we've done on just, myriad topics there. So anyway.
Thank you. What other questions can we answer? I'm not seeing any come through. Just a reminder as well, our intranet is still up and going. So if you ever want to submit questions through the intranet, I always check those the day before we do a town hall to see if any questions have come through there. And that continues to remain an option, and we'll keep that open as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So with that being the case, I will let you get back to your day. Like I said, we're not going to do one in December. We'll pick up again in January. And we will have some updates on the pilot programs that we're working on at that time, and also some of the focus groups that we have been meeting with. So we'll have some feedback from those that we can share as well. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a wonderful Christmas, and we'll do this town hall again in January. Thanks to you all.